Can you believe it's this time of year again already? The time of year all parents dread. Coming up on Sunday, November 5th, daylight savings time is going to end. The clock is going to fall back, basically shoving an extra hour into our day. No one handles this extra hour well, adults or kids. Okay, maybe when I was in my early 20s and I got to stay out longer on a Saturday night, maybe I thought it was cool then. But really, aside from that, nobody thinks this is cool, especially kids. Kids' bodies are really sensitive, and so having this extra hour shoved into the day can really throw off the schedule of even the best sleepers. So let me show you a step-by-step strategy so that you can survive this time change with everybody's sleep intact. Let me start by saying that the best way to make sure that you and your family survive the time change is make sure that your child has great sleep habits all year long. Kids who have good sleep habits can handle minor disruptions in their sleep a lot easier without becoming like overtired disasters. So they can skip a nap, or they can stay up late, or they can handle the time change without it kind of like ruining their whole sleep schedule. So when I say great sleep habits, what I mean is that if you have a child under 8 years old, they should be sleeping 10 to 12 hours through the night without waking up. So if you need help making this like your day-to-day reality, then you really should join me in my next Toddler Sleep Masterclass. It's a free class, but you do have to reserve your spot. And you can do that at toddlersleepmasterclass.com, or I'll link to it in the show notes too. Now, even if you don't have a perfect sleeper just yet, that's okay. You can still survive the time change. You just need to plan ahead a little bit and use my gradual adjustment strategy that I'm going to show you here today. So like I said, on Sunday, November 5th, daylight savings time ends, and we basically get an extra hour shoved into our day. So by gradually adjusting your child's internal clock in the days leading up to the time change, it's going to help your child absorb that extra hour without it being so sudden. Think about it this way. If your child normally goes to bed at like 7 p.m., after the time changes, 7 p.m. is the same thing as the old 8 p.m. So on Sunday, November 5th, after the time changes, 7 p.m. is the same thing as 8 p.m. was on Saturday, November 4th. So if you just stick with the clock, that's like putting your child to bed an hour later. Now, some people do this. Some people just do this and then push through. But if you've ever tried to put your kid to bed an hour later, you probably know that doesn't go very well. They're going to be like struggling to stay awake through dinner, and then they're not going to be able to fall asleep when it's bedtime. To prevent this, what you're going to do in the days leading up to the time change is gradually move your child's bedtime later towards 8 p.m. so that 1 hour isn't shoved into just one day. Now, the gradual adjustment strategy that I'm going to talk you through today applies to both bedtime and nap time. I've got two different strategies to teach you today. I've got one for if you have a younger child, like under 3 years old, and then another if you have an older child over 3 years old. And if you're more of a visual learner like I am, I also made a downloadable guide for this gradual adjustment strategy because sometimes it's easier to see in pictures. So I'm going to put a link where you can download that in the show notes. The first strategy is if you have a younger child, a child under 3 years old, or if your child is really sensitive to their sleep needs, meaning they are like real creatures of habit and they thrive on their specific bedtime. If this is your child, then I want you to start this process on the Wednesday before the time changes. So on Wednesday, November 1st, I want you to move their bedtime 15 minutes later than normal. So if their normal bedtime is 7 p.m., I want you to move it to 7:15. And then Thursday night, 15 minutes later again. So now their bedtime is going to be 7:30. And then Friday, 15 minutes later again. So now their bedtime is 7:45. And then on Saturday, you guessed it, 15 minutes later again. So now their bedtime is 8 p.m. Once Sunday hits and the time has changed, you're going to go back to your normal bedtime of 7 p.m., which is the same time as 8 p.m. was on Saturday the night before. Now time for the second strategy. So if you've got an older kid over 3 years old or a child who's already a pretty good sleeper, they may be able to handle some bigger jumps in these time increments. Or if you've really waited to the last minute to get started, then start here. You can start on the Friday before the time change and move your child's bedtime later in 30-minute increments. So on Friday, let's say we're using that 7 p.m. bedtime as an example, you would move their bedtime to 7:30, and then Saturday make another 30-minute jump. So you're putting them to bed at 8 p.m. Then on Sunday, after the time changes, you go back to putting your child to bed at 7 p.m. because 7 p.m. is going to feel in your child's body like 8 p.m. did the night before. If this whole time change concept really makes your head spin, like I said, it may be easier to see this visually. So I created a free download for you so that you can see the exact steps you need to take each night to gradually adjust your child's bedtime in advance of the time changing on November 5th. I've got a link for that download in the show notes. The fall time change just feels weird to all of us, even those of us who are great sleepers. So the best thing that you can do is once the time does change, stick with that new time on the clock for bedtime and nap time for you and your child. And remember, it's going to take everybody a few days for our circadian rhythms to really adjust to the new time.